Of the 4 live bearers that you find in pet stores for your aquarium, we're going to go over one of them called the Swordtail, Xiphophorus helleri, named after Carl Carl Heller, who was a friend of a very, very famous ichthyologist named Haeckel. And Haeckel named a lot of the fish that were discovered by ichthyologists in South America who sent them to him for proper classification. And a few of the species were named also after Haeckel, like our Haeckel discus. But in this case, the swordtail that was classified by Haeckel was actually named after Carl Heller, who found this fish during war times in Mexico. It was during the American-Mexican War in 1846 on a little excursion in southern Mexico, where he found a very striking fish that had a very long tail, very pretty green and black colors, and today we know it as the swordtail. First, I'm going to show you what a native swordtail looks like. This is Xiphophorus helleri, and in its natural form, before the breeders got a hold of it and started bringing out reds and blacks and yellows, you get a green, basically an olive to light green fish with a long striking yellow, greenish, and black tail. Now, there's one more variation that you can find in the wild in Mexico, and that has an even longer tail that has even more vibrant colors. That's Xiphophorus Montezuma. That's kind of like the Altum is the holy grail for angelfish. For swordtails, it's the Montezuma swordtail. Females are rather drab. They do have the color of the male, but they don't have the long striking tail that swordtails are known for. When I was a kid, and Joe, if he's out in the warehouse looking at fish, and he also can say the same thing. When we were kids, when you go to a pet store, swordtails, the males are actually backed against each other and fight with those swords to create dominance in their little area so they could have the females for themselves. And you would see that like in mid-water, these males going. Unfortunately, that wild aspect of the swordtail's been bred out. I don't think you'll ever see that in the pet store now. So that's one of the things that have been lost with breeding. But one of the things that have been gained is that they're very adaptive to the aquarium, and they have some very bright, vivid colors now for the aquarium. They're also easy to breed. Just like the platies, they're live bearers. They will breed in the fish tank, and the mom will actually, the baby will swim out of the mom when it's time. It's like a big kitten litter swimming out. So it's fun for the family. PG. Except for the breeding stage, you might have to explain the gonopodium and stuff, but that gives you opportunity to talk about other things, I suppose. A few notes about care. Just prepared community flake food, whether it's from Tetra or Mega, Sarah. Sarah makes a great flake food for these guys. These are terrific fish for the aquarium because they are really suited to any of the prepared foods that are offered to them for community fish. Same thing with the platies, same thing with the mollies, same thing with the guppies. You don't have to have anything special. They're also great with planted tanks. They're great with light brackish tanks, unless they get too big. Monos, scats, gobies. So very versatile aquarium fish. Now, I want to add some more of the varieties so you see some of the striking developments that have been made by the breeders. This next one is a Marigold sword, which is, I think, absolutely beautiful. So that's a male and female, and it's pretty obvious the male has a swordtail, the female does not. And in the case of most swordtail varieties, unless they're juveniles, you're going to see the tail on the males. If you go in the pet store and you see a fish with, and it's about this size, and it doesn't have a tail yet, but it has the male gonopodium, it's probably not going to be developing much of a tail, because this is a good late juvenile, close to adult size swordtail. It's going to get about 3 times bigger by the time it gets its max size. So they get about 4 to 5 inches, maybe 4 inches plus the tail when they get absolutely max size. So if you're going to the pet store, look for that tail. The pet store owner would prefer you bought one male and two females, because as they naturally breed, they always spawn more females than males. And if you just get males, he's going to be stuck with a tank full of females. Now this is one that's fun. This guy and girl are red Lyre. They call them red Lyre, but they're orange. So to people who buy online, if you absolutely want red and you don't want orange when you're buying live bears or any ornamental aquarium fish, I call customer service or email customer service and say, how really red? Are they really orange or are they really red? Because these are classified as red-Lyre swords, but as you can see, they're orange. They are definitely orange. These guys are beautiful additions to the tank. They're about twice the price of a regular swordtail, but bred to get that, you know, lyre, which is the old Greek ancient instrument that was shaped like this. But in that process, all their tails all their fins are elongated, including the dorsal fin. And they range in color. This is, I'd say, grade B. It's very orange. It's not very red. But they get a really deep velvet red as well. But the really deep velvet red, they're called velvet red Lyre swordtails, also called vampire, because of blood red, also called blood red. Lyre swordtails need brackish conditions. If you try and put them in 100% fresh water, you're going to be constantly battling ick. Unless you want to have a little salt in your water, I wouldn't get those really deep red, very, very expensive blood red Lyre swords. I'd stick with the grade B swords. These guys are a little more adaptable to water conditions that you probably have at home. That's the only one though. The rest of these, all the ones I'm showing right now, are very adaptable, eat flake food, like I said, and get along with all the other peaceful fish in the tank. So great community fish. The Japanese have been breeding koi, and the Chinese, for BC, so it's almost 2,000 years, that the pond fish, the carp, they were able to breed out some colors and create different variations. One of the most famous variations of koi is called Kohaku, and that means red and white. That's just Japanese for red and white koi. So when you see Kohaku used in ornamental fish, tropical fish, in this case a swordtail, it refers to the color variation from the koi. So the breeders were able to selectively breed into the swordtail that has very vivid red and white markings on the body. No other markings, just like the Kohaku koi. And one of the issues that you'll find when you go into the pet store and you want that color variation, you can imagine what this looks like with a dark background and maybe a planted tank or against driftwood. These fish do not have long tails. It's very, very difficult to find any breeder that's able to get those tails out there. Also, they're so popular that it's very hard for me to bring in larger sizes for the pet store. And when I can bring in larger sizes, you do see a tail on the males, but if it's a green swordtail, it'd be like this. For the Kohaku, it's more like this. There's another variation named after the koi called a Sankei swordtail. Those guys, they're able to breed longer tails on those, and they look a little bit more like the length of the closer to native green swordtail. But the Kohakus, the colors are worth the sacrifice, because you can still find males from females. The males, you have to look for the gonopodium when you're buying them in the pet store, and the females don't have that. And the females tend to have a rounder body. In the pet store, that might be the fish that just ate more. So look for the gonopodium when you want to separate males from females for Kohaku swordtails. So no other thing about them except that they are just as adaptable and require no more special water conditions than any of these others. Also, they have them in black and red eyes. I prefer to stock the red eyes. I think the black kind of mutes it a little bit. I think the red eyes make that white and red contrast stand out even more. So they are very suited to the community fish tank. When we're doing close-ups and looking at these, I realized that, and this happens once in a while, so I'm going to send a note to the breeder who sent me these Kohaku swords. These are all females. So When you go to the pet store and you do not see a gonopodium, that means it's a female. These are late enough in development that you should be seeing a gonopodium. If they're maybe a month or two younger, it wouldn't have developed yet. It just looks like a ventral or anal fin. But in this case, these guys are far enough along, or these gals are far enough along, that I should be able to start distinguishing males from females. So the Kohaku swords that I'm showing you are all females, but still very, very pretty. So you'll have a little sorority in your tank. And please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps my producer get incentivized to do more great videos. And I hope you all have a wonderful time with your fish tank. And please consider some of these live bears for your show. And in this case, my favorite color is Marigold, but like everyone in the trade, I have never seen anyone have two identical aquariums. That's one of the beauties of this hobby. And there are so many different varieties of, just like we discussed with platies, so many varieties of swordtails that you can just shop all day long and just till you find just that color you want for your fish tank. Like all of our shows, if you see any of these fish that you want for your aquarium, you can find them at aquariumfish.com or your local independent aquarium and pet store, and keep everybody in the trade happy. Thank you very much, and see you soon.